We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
When Napoleon lay at Boulogne for a year with his flat-bottom boats and his grand army, he was told by someone, there are bitter weeds in England. There are certainly a great many more of them since the British Expeditionary Force returned. Sir, I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and if the best arrangements are made, as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once more able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary for years, if necessary alone. At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do. That is the resolve of His Majesty's government, every man of them. That is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in their cause and in their need, will defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force. You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
When Napoleon laid
All right, gentlemen, thanks for your attention. Dr. Kelly and I want to present a trip to you today, something that he and I envisioned about a year ago. As you may or may not know, Dr. Kelly teaches the senior elective in World War I, and I teach the senior elective in World War II. And we came together and said, wouldn't it be great if we could organize a trip where we can take a group of young men over to the battlefields of Western Europe in June, so that you have the opportunity not only to read history and study history, but also to live history. So this is a course that we're going to offer, or a trip that we're going to offer to rising juniors and rising seniors. And this June will be the inaugural trip. So we're just going to provide you with a very brief itinerary of some of the things that you will see when we travel over to Western Europe in June of 2018. So to get started, we are going to travel from BWI to London, and when we arrive in London, we're going to, on the day we land, the first place we'll go is the Imperial War Museum, which is south of the Thames River. In my opinion, one of the finest museums in London. It was actually created following the end of the Great War and is specifically dedicated to both World War I and World War II. It was recently refurbished, and inside you'll see all sorts of things from planes to V-1 bombs to, again, thorough exhibits. It has one of the best Holocaust exhibits I've ever been through, and that would certainly be a part of our time in the Imperial War Museum. Also in London, we're going to go to the War Rooms. This was the command center for Churchill and his staff during World War II, and it has been immaculately preserved. It's off of St. James Park, and this is actually a photograph of Churchill's bedroom in the war rooms themselves. And they also have a Churchill exhibit, perhaps the most thorough that I've ever seen, and there they have the original 10 Downing Street door, so I just took a picture of that. Once we leave London, we're going to take a trip north toward Cambridge, where the Duxford airfields are. The Duxford airfields are, for the most part, dedicated to the Battle of Britain, and they have the most extensive collection of World War II aircraft there. And not only are they available to be seen, but they're constantly under refurbishment and renovation, and they fly Spitfires every day at lunch, so you have the opportunity to see these planes in action. They also have B-17s, B-24s, but if you're into military aircraft, it's absolutely fantastic up at Duxford. Once we leave London after 3 days, we're going to get on the Eurostar and we'll cross the Channel. It's a pretty quick crossing. We'll arrive at Calais, and from Calais we're going to head north, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kelly here for a moment as he leads us towards Dunkirk.
So from Calais we'll go to Dunkirk. As you all know from the movie or from your study of history, Dunkirk is where the British Expeditionary Force is forced onto the beach, and through Herculean efforts by Churchill and the English people, the British military, the soldiers at least, are saved. And then from there, we're going to Ypres.
There's just the,
oh, I'm sorry.
There's the evacuation of Dunkirk. Go to Ypres.
Now, Ypres is really one of the major battles. There are 3 battles fought there during World War I. It is also the place where the beginning of trench warfare starts, and eventually the trenches will be from the British Channel all the way to Switzerland. And Ypres is taken by the Germans, and back and forth. The cathedral is totally destroyed, and now it is rebuilt. It's attached to one of the better World War I museums about the Western Front and the like. And every night, they have a ceremony here on the walls of this monument. They have all the names of all the soldiers. And in the evening before, just as the sun's going down, they have a ceremony every single night. And as the centenary is coming along, it gets more and more crowded. It's quite moving, even for those people who don't know much about the war. And from there, we'll work our way down through the Somme Valley, the Somme River Valley, where for 4 long years, there is a battle back and forth for maybe 1.5 miles of land, and this will be the epitome of trench warfare and the argument that will be made after the war that this was unnecessary. All of this is unnecessary. And from there, we'll head our way back down towards the coast.
So as we continue southwest into the region of Normandy, our first stop is going to be in the town of Caen. Caen was tragically destroyed by the Allied forces, not the German forces, in an effort to weed out the Germans. They wouldn't give up this city because this was where the German headquarters for the defense of the Atlantic Wall were located. And over those headquarters, which were in underground bunkers, they've now erected the Caen Memorial, which was dedicated to the Battle of Normandy. But you also have the opportunity to go underground into the German bunkers and see the German command center, which remains intact. On our way through Normandy, we're going to stop at Pegasus Bridge. Pegasus Bridge was important in that as the forces landed on the beaches, the greatest risk to them was being flanked. And so the British airborne to the east and then the 82nd and 101st Airborne to the west protected the flanks of the British, Canadian, American troops as they made their way inland. And Pegasus Bridge has been sort of memorialized in the movie The Longest Day, so if any of you have had the opportunity to see that, we certainly will watch it before we take the trip. This is important, and there's an inn at Pegasus Bridge that remains intact. It's in all the photographs of the day the bridge was taken by the British paratroopers, and the woman that runs the inn was about 6 years old at the time the Germans occupied it, and she still runs the inn today. I had the opportunity to meet her, talk about living history. She has so many memories of what it was like to be occupied by Germany during World War II. And then we'll make our way to Bayeux. Bayeux is going to be our base for all of our other Normandy excursions. It's a medieval town with a beautiful cathedral, and as many of you know, it's home to the Bayeux Tapestry. So we'll make just a little side trip to see the tapestry, which commemorates William the Conqueror's victory over Harold at Hastings in 1066. From there, we'll move out to the beaches. We'll first go to Arromanches, which is where the landing beaches for the Canadian and English troops are. So Sword, Gold, and Juno are there. These are mulberry harbors. One of the challenges of the Normandy invasion was actually finding a way to disembark hundreds of thousands of men and equipment, and the Germans had fortified all harbors along the Norman coast. So the British, Churchill namely, came up with a brilliant idea. We'll create man-made harbors, we'll tow them across the English Channel, and then we will sink them off the coast of Normandy and tether our ships there and then move the equipment onto the beaches. So you see the remnants of these mulberry harbors off of Arromanches, and then this is just a memorial to the men that died there. As we move again westward, we'll go see the German gun batteries at Long-sur-Mer. These are the only batteries that remain intact. Most of the guns would have been scrapped for metal following the war, but it was very, very important that these batteries be knocked out early because they could take out the ships that were offshore 2 to 3 miles. But they're really neat that you can go into them today. And then, of course, as we go to Colville-sur-Mer, this is where the American Cemetery resides above Omaha Beach, and we'll visit it twice, once on the way down the coast, and then I'll show you something at the end where we'll conclude our Normandy trip. This is what it looks like today. Absolutely beautiful, and we can actually walk down a cut to the east or the west and then traverse the beach and get a sense of what it must have been like for the men who had to make that ascent. This is the reflecting pool at the American Cemetery. From there, we'll go up to Utah Beach. And at Utah, there are, again, German bunkers. This was a German bunker, which was then occupied by the American forces following the taking of Utah. Gun emplacements. And this is the monument at Pointe du Hoc. I don't know if you are familiar with this, but this was an incredible feat by the U.S. Rangers to scale the cliffs and knock out German gun batteries so that they couldn't threaten the ships offshore who were putting the men on at Utah Beach. So this is the memorial at Pointe du Hoc. And then we will conclude in Saint-Mère-Église. Saint-Mère-Église is home to the Airborne Museum, dedicated to the men of the 82nd and the 101st Airborne, which protected the western flank of the American and Allied troops who landed. You'll notice here there's a parachute there, and there's a story of a soldier, John Steele, who was a member of the 82nd Airborne, who, when descending at night, got hung up on the steeple and was left hanging there as many of his colleagues were killed in the square by the German soldiers, and he actually survived and went back year after year and was sort of a local hero. So we'll see John Steele. And then we will conclude at the cemetery one night, again, similar. I don't know if I can hear this. So this is 5 o'clock every night at the American Cemetery above Omaha Beach. So with that, we'll throw it open to some questions. I guess before you bring some, let me just say, if you have interest in this trip, your next step is to contact Dr. Kelly and myself, come speak with us, and we are going to organize a more thorough presentation that we would then give to you and your parents about what this is going to entail. But any questions? Yeah. We can only estimate that at this point. There are some fixed costs, like the cost of the coach that we will have to take once we get on the shore or get on land in France. But rough estimate, $5,000. Yes, Ben. How long? About 10 days, Ben. Any other questions? Thank you, guys. I appreciate your attention. Oh, yeah. And by the way, one other huge thanks. We could not possibly have put this together without the skills of Bowen and An. They need to get a huge hand. They put the whole thing together. Thanks, yeah, definitely.
Gentlemen, football guys, you can leave to go get ready for your film.